Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Horror Mine. My name is Vic Shy, and this is the Scare Score, where I break down horror movies and rate them on how scary I think they are. In this episode, I'll be going over the 2012 American horror film, Sinister. I'll be going over the events that take place throughout the film while rating the scares on how scary they are or attempt to be. Sinister is considered a classic among horror fans and for some, one of the scariest films of all time. But how scary is it? Sit back and relax and join me as we explore Sinister and tally up the Scare Score. Our movie begins with an extremely unsettling sight. Four family members are hanging from a tree with sacks over their heads. An unseen person cuts a tree branch, slowly raising the family into the air. The scene is shot with an old grainy film aesthetic that creates a really unnerving feel. It's a bold way to start the film, which has plenty more where that came from. We meet our main character, Ellison Oswalt, a true crime novel writer portrayed by Ethan Hawke. He's moving into a new house with his wife Tracy and his kids, Trevor and Ashley. He is greeted by the town's sheriff, who isn't a fan of Ellison and his works. The sheriff asks Ellison to get back into the moving truck and get out of town. Apparently, one of his books on a previous case caused the killer to go free. A terrible crime occurred in the small town they just moved into, and the townsfolk aren't too happy with Ellison's presence. The sheriff points at the house and tells Ellison that he finds it in extremely bad taste. That's because this is the house that belonged to the Stevenson family in the film's intro. Four of the family members died, and their young daughter Stephanie went missing. Ellison is hiding this from his wife because he doesn't want her to freak out. He looks out at the tree in the backyard where the crime occurred, which gives off a pretty unsettling feel. He goes up to the attic and sees a scorpion on the floor. He obliterates it and finds a box labeled Home Movies. Inside the box is a film projector and reels of Super 8 film of the different videos. During dinner, Ellison discusses his new book and Trevor asks him about the case. Tracy doesn't want the kids involved in their father's work as he does research on some truly disturbing things. Ellison and Tracy have a conversation where we learn that his last successful novel, Kentucky Blood, was written 10 years ago. He believes that this case will be another breakthrough and make him successful again. Tracy threatens to take the kids and leave if this goes south like last time. Ellison has a lot riding on this new novel, but it's clearly taking a huge toll on his family. He begins working on the case and we see the disturbing aftermath of the crime on his board. He turns on the projector and starts watching the home videos he found. The first video, called Family Hangout 11, shows the family having a good time, but there is an odd and mysterious undertone. It then cuts to the family hanging out under the tree, and Ellison witnesses the horrific event unfold on screen, something we've already seen, so I won't give it double the points. He starts analyzing the disturbing video with the help of his trusty assistant, a bottle of whiskey. He goes out and looks at the tree, wondering why anyone would film such a thing. He goes back in and hears a door open somewhere in the house. Someone walks past him in the dark, which ends up being Ashley looking for the bathroom. He puts her to bed and compliments her wall paintings, something she really enjoys doing. Ashley wants to go back to their old house and he promises her that they'll go back when he finishes his book. He goes back to his office and watches the next video titled Barbecue 79. We see a different family spending time together and the dad is definitely rocking a 70s look. It then cuts to a dark garage where the audio in the background sounds extremely unsettling and gave me chills. The family is gagged and tied inside the car that is set on fire, hence the title of the video. This is a great scare scene that is more disturbing than the previous home video. There's just something about that strange chant-like audio that really got under my skin. Ellison is just as disturbed by what he saw and dials 911 to report the snuff films. He then glances at his book Kentucky Blood and has a change of heart, instead deciding to continue working on his book at another chance for fame and fortune. That looks like the face of someone who's just begun their villain arc. The other home videos are titled Pool Party 66, Sleepy Time 98, and Lawn Work 86. These cheeky titles directly reference the horrific crimes committed in the videos and the year they took place. It also sounds like every horror YouTuber trying not to get demonetized. Before he can watch Pool Party, he hears a noise somewhere in the house. He goes out thinking it's Ashley wandering the house again, but she is in bed sound asleep. We then get the generic scene where the main character roams the dark hallways surrounded by creepy noises all around the house. This leads to him discovering Trevor inside a box using his imagination. Trevor is experiencing a night terror, something he hasn't done in years. Aside from the generic lead up to it, seeing Trevor freak out like that was pretty effective, mostly because I wasn't expecting it. They discuss what happened the previous night, but Trevor has no memory of it. Ellison watches Pool Party, which immediately starts out creepier than the previous tapes. We see a family having a good time at the pool, and it switches to them having a not so good time at the pool. They are tied to pool chairs and pulled into the water one by one. We then see a demonic entity inside the water watching the horrific events before slowly turning to look at the camera. This is the film's main baddie, and he doesn't look overly scary. I saw someone comment on the trailer for Sinister 2 that he looks like a Slipknot band member, and now I can't unsee that. The projector spontaneously combusts, damaging the film. We then get one of my favorite horror movie staples, the internet search. He looks up how to fix the Super 8 film to get a clear look at the entity on the video. Tracy and Trevor come home arguing about something he did at school. He decided to draw the family hanging out under the tree on the classroom board in permanent marker. Trevor is a little shit, and I found his character extremely annoying. Tracy is also a pretty annoying character because all she does is whine and argue with Ellison, although I do see where she's coming from. He watches the next tape titled Sleepy Time 98. Unlike the previous tapes, there is no footage of the family having a good time before the crime. The person recording wanders through the dark house until we see a couple tied up in their bedroom. The atmosphere is very eerie and the background chanting still unsettling. The killer takes a knife to their necks and the gruesome act can be seen on the reflection of Ellison's glasses. The last victim is a young boy and Ellison downs some whiskey to help him cope with what he's seeing. While still unsettling, I think this is the weakest tape so far in terms of scare factor. I think jumping right into the crime was a mistake, as seeing the family before their demise would have made it more effective. He examines the footage and sees what appears to be a demonic sigil drawn on the wall, a symbol that could also be seen on the hood of the car during Barbecue 79. The latest home video is of the Miller family murders that occurred in 1998 in St. Louis, Missouri, and their 13-year-old son Christopher Miller is still missing. He hears a creaking noise above him and the lights suddenly go out. He hears the creaking noise again, this time much louder, followed by the sound of running footsteps. He wanders the dark house again, which is something we've seen for the third time now. He hears an extremely loud bang in the form of a jump scare and arms himself with a knife. He goes into the attic and we get another jump scare as the door slams shut behind him. He sees the lid of the home videos box moving, which turns out to have a snake underneath. The back of the lid has a child's drawing depicting all the crimes of the home videos. Next to each of them is someone named Mr. Boogie. He hears another noise coming from inside the attic and falls straight through the floor. I don't know why, but this scene made me chuckle. Maybe it's because I'm becoming more unhinged with each episode.
Hi, my name is Teresa, and I'm a good girl.
And swinging wild haymakers until something lands.
This was a decent scare scene with a really suspenseful atmosphere. Sure, it's pretty generic, but the suspense is well done and effective. Ellison suffers a cut on his leg and is questioned by a sheriff's deputy about the incident. It turns out the deputy is a fan and asks for a signed copy of Kentucky Blood. He offers to help Ellison with his latest book so that he can get a shout out in the acknowledgement section, just like I am going to give a shout out to all the new Golden Kayako members of the channel. Thank you to Anya, Etch, Captain Kirk, Ganguro Horror, Ghostio, and Bixwix. Thank you all for becoming Golden Kayakos, and to everyone else supporting the channel by becoming members, I truly appreciate it. Ellison asks him to find the street address of the St. Louis family murders and any possible details on Barbecue 79. He also starts calling him Deputy So-and-so. Ellison watches one of his old interviews he had after the success of Kentucky Blood. He says that he writes these novels so that the families can get justice and not for the fame. Although every time he talks about it now, he pretty much sounds like this.
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
He looks through all the videos and finds Mr. Boogie hidden in each of them. Mr. Boogie's design isn't necessarily all that scary, but his presence in the background of each of these crimes is definitely creepy. Deputy So-and-so calls and tells him that Barbecue 79 took place in Sacramento, California to the Martinez family. Their 9-year-old son is still missing. He gets the street address to the incident in St. Louis and immediately hangs up on him. He discovers that before the Stevenson family moved into this house, they lived in St. Louis in the same house where the Millers did. He then watches the phone footage of when he fell from the attic and sees several ghostly hands pulling him down. He quickly shuts off his laptop and begins to realize this case is becoming more than he bargained for. This was a really good scare scene with some creative scares. Even though it was kinda predictable, seeing Mr. Boogie's face move on screen was super cool and creepy. I expected the scene to end there, but then they added the ghostly hands pulling him down as the cherry on top. His terrified reaction perfectly captures how good the scare was. We then get a very good transition into the next scare. We get several shots of the house in complete silence until a door slightly moves and the projector turns on by itself. He walks into the office and sees the disturbing home videos playing on the screen. He turns the projector off and grabs the picture of Mr. Boogie in the bushes. He holds it up to the window, which leads to a predictable but still effective jump scare. He grabs a massive baseball bat and goes out alone. Instead of Mr. Boogie, he finds Trevor shivering in the bushes having another night terror. He rushes him inside and goes back out for his bat and flashlight. He encounters a large dog that I almost wanted to call Padfoot. The dog then gets spooked by the spirits of the missing children standing directly behind Ellison. This scare scene started out really strong and then fell into generic territory. So far, this movie has a mixture of both well-crafted creative scares and generic loud jump scares, which I understand because it's trying to cater to a more casual audience. Tracy asks Ellison to stop writing the book because she's worried by everything that's happening. He says he is onto something huge and this is his shot to give her the life they deserve. The next day, Deputy So-and-so arrives with more information on the cases. He realizes that the murders are linked and wants to know more so he can help. Ellison agrees to let him help and shows him all the research he's done. Being that the first incident took place in the 60s, they think the perpetrator must be elderly by now. Toxicology reports show that some of the victims were drugged, removing the need to overpower them. The incidents are similar in that all the family members died except for one child who always went missing. They are also linked through the strange demonic symbol that appears on some of the tapes and Mr. Boogie's appearances. Deputy So-and-so says he will get into contact with Professor Jonas, who is a subject matter expert on the occult. Ellison watches the final home video titled Lawn Work 86, which is arguably the scariest one. Someone is recording a family in the dark right outside their home. They then begin pushing a lawnmower until someone suddenly appears tied directly in front of it as we hear a really loud and disturbing noise. Ellison's reaction to the jump scare is perfect and it scared the crap out of me the first time I saw it. Even watching it a second time for the sake of this episode made me cringe in anticipation. This is a very well crafted jump scare that hits like a truck. Every other home video was a slow and disturbing type of scary, and placing lawn work as the last one was pretty clever. He then speaks to Professor Jonas, played by none other than Vincent D'Onofrio. Professor Jonas seems to already be familiar with the cases and says the symbol belongs to a pagan deity named Bagul, the eater of children. He says that Bagul consumes the souls of children and brings them back to his own netherworld. Professor Jonas then asks Elliot to tell him everything, though we don't actually see that. As we'll see later, Professor Jonas is a severely underused resource. That night, the projector again turns on by itself, although this time it doesn't really feel scary. There's only so many times a scare tactic can be used until it becomes drawn out and ineffective. Ellison arms himself with the bat and wanders the dark house for the 5th time by my count. We get a super duper predictable jump scare when one of the spirits of the lost children suddenly appears right next to him. The spirit of each child appears and slowly stalks him. I've never personally been scared of ghost children and didn't really find this scene scary. He returns to the office where the projector is still on and goes to check on his family. Everyone is sound asleep except for Ashley, who encounters the spirit of Stephanie Stevenson right next to a painting of Bagul. Not a really scary scene that sort of feels drawn out, especially because this is the 5th time Ellison is wandering the dark house chasing creepy noises. I like that the haunting is expanding to the family and that picture of Bagul on the wall was very eerie. Ellison is now extremely paranoid and falls asleep on the couch holding his Zubat. He tells Deputy So-and-so about what happened the previous night and he says Ellison should not be sleeping in this house. Ashley paints a picture of the Stevensons' daughter Stephanie and Tracy finally learns the truth about the house they're living in. This causes an intense argument between the two where Ellison says that writing this book will be his legacy.
Did I get Daddy in trouble?
Yes, you did, you little snitch. Tracy finds Ellison asleep to one of his old interviews and feels bad for him. That night, someone records the couple while they sleep. This specific shot doesn't have the cinematic feel like the rest of the film and feels like an actual video recording, which makes it a lot scarier. He wakes up and wanders through his dark house for the 6th time and sees light coming from the attic. He climbs up and finds the spirits of the lost children watching the home videos before slowly turning their heads towards him. Bagul appears on screen looking very menacing and jump scares Ellison off the ladder. The projector suddenly turns off before it comes crashing down with the box of home videos. This was a good scare scene and the most intense one so far. I could have gone without the Bagul jump scare because I think having him appear on screen should have been enough to terrify Ellison off the ladder. Ellison has finally had enough and decides to burn the projector and the videos. Tracy comes out and he tells her that they have to leave immediately. They grab the kids and Ellison speeds away as fast as possible. He gets pulled over by the sheriff and tells him that they're leaving town like he suggested in the beginning of the film. Ellison says he won't be writing the novel, which makes both the sheriff and Tracy happy. They move back into their old house, which is massive compared to the previous one and most likely bought with the Kentucky Blood paycheck. The family is all happy to be back, but I wouldn't crack a smile with 15 minutes left in the film. He receives a call from Deputy So-and-so but ignores it. He is trying to move on from this disturbing case, but he's already reached the point of no return. He receives a video call from Professor Jonas, who has more disturbing information on Bagul. We see 3 pictures with Bagul's sigil along with a scorpion, a snake, and a dog, all the things Ellison encountered throughout the film. He says that early Christians believed that Bagul lived in the images of himself and used them as gateways into his realm. They believed that those who saw the images could become possessed and commit horrible acts. Bagul was also known to abduct children into his realm through the images. Ellison realizes that he's in danger, but instead of telling Professor Jonas everything like he asked him to do earlier, just asks what happened if the images are burned. Not telling Professor Jonas Brothers the whole story is such a waste of the subject matter expert. He then does to the video files what I did to my browser history back in high school. He declines another call from Deputy So-and-so before finding the home video box in his attic. He then finds an envelope containing the true video game endings of the home videos. While putting the films back together, he finally picks up Deputy So-and-so's phone call. The deputy tells him that Ellison shouldn't have moved away from the house. He says that each family lived in the house of the previously murdered family. The most recent family was then murdered after moving out of the house, meaning that since Ellison moved out of the Stevenson house, he and his family are next. Instead of telling Deputy So-and-so everything he knows, he just hangs up the phone and watches the Snyder cut of all the videos. It's revealed that the missing children were responsible for the deaths of their families. We see little Stephanie climb off the tree and swing from her dead dad's leg, which is highly disturbing but more than I ever got to do with mine. All the kids were possessed to commit the horrible acts against their families and were then abducted into Bagul's realm so he could consume their souls. Ellison starts to feel drowsy and realizes that Ashley spiked his coffee with a strange green liquid, causing him to pass out. He and the rest of the family wake up tight on the floor and Ashley walks in holding an axe. The look on his face looks like he wants to say,
I should have fucking listened to my wife.
She then eerily says that she is going to make Ellison famous again. She holds up the axe and gives Ellison the fame he's been seeking, minus all the interviews. After the deed is done, she walks into the hallway covered in blood. She is greeted by the souls of the other children who welcome her into the Bagul gang. She adds her depiction of the murder onto the back of the box lid and Bagul appears directly behind her, scaring the other kids away. I think it's a cool little attention to detail that each drawing on the box was clearly made by a different child each time. We see a green substance on his hands, the same substance used to drug Ellison, and I don't want to know where it came from. In the film's final scene, he picks up Ashley and walks right into the film. The Oswald family murder has eerily been titled House Painting 12 and left in the attic for the next family to find. We get one last highly unnecessary Bagul jump scare as the movie ends. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Sinister. My friends, this was a pretty good good horror film that I enjoyed watching. From the film's disturbing opening scene, I had a feeling this was going to be an enjoyable time. However, this film is far from being one of the scariest movies of all time. The scariest aspect of the film is by far the disturbing and unsettling home videos depicting the horrible crimes. Their realistic presentation made them very unnerving to watch, and I was genuinely creeped out by each one. There are a few other well-crafted scares outside the home videos, but they definitely carry the movie scare factor on their back. Everything outside of that was pretty disappointing in terms of scares. There are a ton of jump scares and generic horror movie cliches that we've seen time and time again. While I do understand that they're trying to appeal to a more casual audience, it got very repetitive and a bit annoying after a while. Overall, there is a decent balance between the generic cliches and the well-crafted, slower and more unsettling horror, earning Sinister a decent scare score of 55%. The audience scare score, which was averaged from ratings by channel members, is 52%. The scariest scene in the film is lawn work, which combines the unsettling feel of the home videos with a cleverly executed jump scare that I did not see coming. They knew exactly what they were doing with the placement of this home video being last, which really helped make it that much scarier. But as always, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you to all our Golden Kayako members and to everyone else supporting the Horror Mind through channel membership. Thank you all for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see y'all right back here in the Horror Mine. Y'all stick around.